Thank you, Marcus Grover. This was important to see highlighted by you the invisible costs. Director General of FAO emphasized the economics, need for cost-benefit assessment, and including all costs and all benefits. I think it was also telling what you told us about the scale of environmental effects, the greenhouse gas emission costs, etc. Colleagues, we have come a long way in this first session on framing the issues. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I think Director General of FAO clearly emphasized the positioning of food waste and losses in a food systems context. He emphasized the economics and cost benefits. Other speakers highlighted, it came up twice clearly, at least twice, the target, measure, act approach, underpinned by sound economics, where target is to be derived from SDG 12.3. And we have already touched on behavioral change needs. So I would like to now open the discussion and first call on any of you who would like to address the presentation by Dr. Chu, the Director General of FAO. Who would like to address Dr. Chu? You were crystal clear, Excellency. I would like to, okay, Marcelo, please.
Director, you say that there are many lands that are completely uncultivated. So I think so. Where are these lands, especially? In what part of the world? Because, for example, I come from Argentina. I want to know if my country is on one or not.
Yeah, you know, if we look the global, our beautiful blue planet, we have some people very lucky, like you from Argentina. That part of the world, even Argentina, preliminary estimate your land can feed 400 million people. But now you only feed about 40 billion. Yeah? So it's land itself, we have a lot of beautiful land in this planet, in Brazil, in America, in Ukraine, and even parts of Europe. So we have to consider the global zoning of land use and the SDGs. That's Professor Jeff Sachs. We had a lot of intensive discussion. Second, what I mentioned here, we said when we waste food, it's from those food we wasted, converted to the land we waste. So that's it's another story. So the third, I think the food waste is much easier to be harnessed if we pay enough attention on, and by political meaning, economic meaning, even special tax. When I was vice minister in China, we have a political commitment during past 6 years. I think it's food waste in China, it's reduced 80%. Just simply the big campaign, national campaign, headed by president. And the second, if you can go further, you can charge a special tax. Yeah? If you, let's say, 1 kilo for one each day of meat, it's more than enough. But if you waste too much, you have to pay special tax. And culturally, I think that's why when I was a small son, I educated by my grandma, never left 1 grain of rice on the table. I think you have to start with a family. Family education is a long life beneficiary. And of course, in this part of the world, you need to build up the scientific, evident way of life consumption pattern. And then you can build up your body more healthy, not only good for yourself, for your family, and also good for social security, and patient and medical companies. Frankly, I never went to see doctor during past 40 years. Yeah, after I graduated from the university, I never see the doctor. Just from the food consumption to the health management and to the health manipulation. We need the people to lead by how to health manipulation by yourself. It's a daily life by your own, yeah? Not like a giant panda, they couldn't manage by their own. Yeah? That's why they become almost extinct. Yeah? If the people you can't manage by yourself, manipulate by yourself, you will become some kind of panda. It's dangerous for the society and for your family. Thank you.
I have a question, Dr. Chu. As far as I understood from your reports, not many countries carefully measure food loss and waste. Maybe about 30 or so do carefully measure according to your definition. What are your plans at FAO to give us a global picture of sound data?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Van Blanc. It's a challenge for FAO and it's a challenge for the member countries. The point is, you see, that's what the Secretary General of Mr. Guterres already made an announcement. They're going to have a World Food System Summit 2021. Yeah. And because we needed the more political commitment first. Second, we have to improve the capacity for how to handle the food loss. Food loss is closely linked to post-harvest treatment. Post-harvest treatment, you need the technology, you need the infrastructure, you need the basic things like electricity and so on. Even solar energy, you need the solar silicon. So, and that's why I strongly recommend my member countries which have a volunteer contribution to have the people from the recipient country or least developed countries, you can help them to improve the capacity of the food loss. That's closely linked to production value chain and also and the technology. Second, for the West, I think also this basic data collection, which we have a close cooperation with the African Union on the other data, also with the Rockefeller Foundation. And data, big data from agriculture and rural development far behind, or we can say we have big potential to have a more big data. That will be close linkage with civil society, with the development, and with the civilization. And that's part of the urgently needed to more investment. And of course, we appreciate that we can have more close with the European Union in the future and others, and the Bill Gates Foundation. Mr. Gates, we had 2 meetings during the last September in New York. We will strengthen the cooperation on the data. Data is very important. And of course, political willingness and the capacity, and then approach, which we if we're willing to offer the TCP, technical cooperation with them. And then we hope we can have more improvement to meet the demand which we expected. Thank you.
I see a number of hands up, but I would like to ask that we also include now our second speaker, Commissioner Sacco. But you may like to continue to also press questions on Dr. Chu. So I've seen Mr. Del Solar, State Secretary Fuchtel, others over here. So, Mr. Del Solar, do you gather good data at your ministry in Argentina? But ask your question, please.
Yeah. Yes, for Dr. Cruz is a question. We know a lot about the products, the food, the nutrients that they have, but we don't know much about our soils. No? Are you thinking any programs to try to know more about our soils all over the world, because we need this as a basis to produce our food?
Let's collect a few key points and State Secretary Fuchtel, welcome.
My question goes to the database. What is your recommendation to, for example, the food when we start, which year, and so we can count the results of our work? Some countries will do it in other ways. We in Germany have very big problems to find a good basic for that, so we can say what is efficiency and so on.
Okay. Sambuco?
Okay, so my question is to Honorable Ambassador Sako and probably Professor Hatibu. So the question is regarding the measurement and commitment by government, in this case African governments, to the cause of food loss and waste reduction. So according to your presentation, Your Excellency, is very few countries are actually reporting on the progress towards meeting the set targets. And probably linked to that is the fact that most of the African governments are actually not putting in resources to address the problem. And that's why they're not even measuring. So how might we get our governments to actually take the lead in the efforts to food loss and waste reduction? And linking to that, to one of the presentations where we actually put the actual cost of the losses, because the figures that have been flashed here are global. How about if, in part of our measurement, just to spur action from our governments, put the actual cost to the losses? Probably that would help trigger action like allocation of resources. You'd realize in many of our countries, I'll speak about Kenya, most of the work we're doing on food loss reduction is driven by development partners. But government commitment to the cause has to be triggered. It has to be there, has to be felt, because otherwise it will be Rockefeller Foundation will come in, support us, we do what we can do. How about sustainability? By getting the government put resources into this action.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Stefan Schmitz, let me also emphasize, let's open it up to all speakers and to all ideas in line with session 1 terms of reference. Stefan Schmitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I'm invited to comment on all other speakers, I'd like to underline what Nuhu Hatibu talked, and his strong plea for strengthening smallholders and traders in the food value chain. As I speak here, from the development cooperation world, I say with a bit of self-critique, we all in the development community far too long one-sidedly focused on strengthening the demand side on the fields, so smallholders in their ability to produce more, to be more productive, but we simply neglected downsize the value chain, so traders and cool chains, processing, and all that. The other point, the food waste in the global south, I think, is not just happening post-harvest, but also pre-harvest in that part. And that is, I think, often neglected as well. So seeds that not reach the soil, and losses taking place during growing period. So there is a greater need for resilience in the pre-harvest part of the overall food chain. That would be another point for me I would like to see underlined. Thank you.
Thank you. Raphael Flor, who happens to be one of the key masterminds behind this meeting. Raphael.
Thank you, Joachim. Thank you for the presentations and the panel. I would like to pose a question to the panel. While we seem to have a good progress being made on the analytics, political commitment and action, there are still critical gaps. So, and it still seems this as a piecemeal approach. What do you feel needs to happen to bring these efforts together? How do we have a more comprehensive approach to this, and what is needed for that to happen?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I take two more and then go back to I take three more and then go back to the panel. Ms. Jewell.
Is it working? Yes, it's working. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me here. Now, I have a question for the Director General of the FAO and actually also for the entire panel. Right now, the fight against food waste, although we all know there's been enormous progress in the last many years, but most of the fight against food waste lies on the shoulders of volunteer people, of volunteer organizations like mine, Stop Wasting Food. I mean, we have no money. We are really doing the best of the best for many years. I did it for 11 years. A lot of good organizations all over Europe, all over the world are fighting against food waste. Isn't it about time that the governments of the world create national food waste prevention and reduction funds? I'm not talking about only about the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation, fantastic job. I'm talking about that we have to need foundations in every country in the world to support the initiative to prevent food loss and to prevent food waste. Otherwise, the effort of the fight against food waste, it's lying on the shoulders of the volunteers. How can FAO, and now I'm talking also looking at the commissioner, my fellow champion 12.3, Vitenius Andriukaitis, how can we together make governments to inspire to do that work, to make those foundations for every government, for every country, so the fight against food waste can continue and will not die out? Thank you.
Okay. Kevin Fay, Global Food Cold Chain Council.
Thank you, Joachim, and again, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this magnificent meeting. The one point I wanted to make is as we looked around and we're working on data gathering with the industry and the side of the cold chain, but in fact what we looked at historically from an agriculture standpoint, most agriculture programs seem focused on production or exports. They need to be focused on net production. And so the data metric that we are using to measure our success needs to be recalibrated to take into account the fact of that quite a bit is lost post-harvest, that some is lost pre-harvest as well. And it requires a re-education as well from the basic ag community in every nation in terms of how they measure their success on that. That's an important starting point as we then look towards how we build those solutions.
Maximo Torero, FAO.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have three comments or three questions. The first one is more a comment on the definition. I think one of the efforts that we're trying to bring with the new SOFA is being very clear on the definition of what the SDG indicator, and I am very happy to hear what the African Union is saying, because exactly what we are doing. So losses is from post-harvest up to including wholesale, and waste is retail up to the consumer. It's very important because if not, we are talking of different things, and therefore we cannot make policy recommendations about it. Mm-hmm. And the policy objectives will be different if we're talking about waste or we're talking about losses. Yeah. The second one, which is linked to what was mentioned by Agra, the incentives part. I think it's crucial to understand this, because I cannot make a farmer to use hermetic bags and to dry their maize to avoid aflatoxins if in the market he's not going to be paid the price of the premium of that aflatoxin-free maize. And if we don't have standards and price premiums in the market, we are misaligning all the incentives to reduce losses. So that's the part that is important. And the third one, and I finish there, is the cost-benefit side. We normally talk about cost benefits, and Dr. Xu mentioned this is very important, but it's also important to cost the hidden cost, which is emissions, water, and land usage. If we include those, then we are really doing optimal cost-benefit analysis of potential interventions, and then we see what to do where in the value chain, and that's the whole effort to identify where are the hotspots to be able to minimize losses. Thank you.
I would like to now turn back to the panel in reverse order. Marcus Gover would go first and so on, backwards. You have heard what colleagues have said. Please pick and choose. Be brief. Maybe we then can try to get one other round. Marcus, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to respond to the comments about how we make this not piecemeal. And the success in the UK is because it's not piecemeal, because we have 90% of all the food put on the table from the businesses working together. That's what makes it not piecemeal. It starts with government policy to put it in place. It then comes to public-private partnership to create that system change. It then needs investment, and it's a sort of three-step model: policy, public-private partnership, commercialization. And I think if we can take that model around the world, which is what we're looking to try to do at the moment, that can drive system change. Behind some of this, though, is benchmarking. So we know that in the UK, 3% of the throughput of food manufacturers is lost or wasted. And that when we come to the retail side, it's only 1%. So we know where the hotspots. When we come to the citizens, it's 20% of everything they buy is lost or wasted. So those benchmarks are behind this. So with the data and the working together, we can get system change. And without system change, we won't solve it. The good news, though, is that it's possible. We've shown that it's possible. So we just need to put together the programs and fund the programs, as Selina was saying, to make this happen. Mm-hmm. So that would be my comment.
Thank you. Yolanda Kakavadze.
That's right. Working together. But I also think that it's terribly important to share experiences. I have been stealing from the UK experiences every good idea that I can and transform it to make it work in Ecuador. But in order to do that, we have to create that network. This is a little network, but we have to formalize it in such a way that we can approach that network and say, this idea. And of course, whenever you have anything good to share, to put it there for free. And that is something that would reduce cost for everybody, would validate the importance of copying good ideas, and would validate the need to share between countries, between sectors, and actions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Professor Atibu.
Thank you very much. I'd like to just first of all emphasize what Aaron just said. The issue is the bottom line. Now, because there is an agreement that actually we're producing enough food, more than enough. So the real problem now of food in the world is the waste and the loss. But then you don't have a department of food loss reduction in any government, majority of the government. Even you go to private sector companies, they've got a quality control department. They should have food loss reduction department, which is paid for reducing loss. And people are hired for that. And then the technical capacities that we have, for example, starting from FOA and all the agricultural systems, how much of technical capacity is there in that particular area? So one of the things that Selina said of moving it away from the shoulders of volunteers to mainstream is to make sure that in government there are really strong departments responsible and paid for to reduce losses. In the private sector also, we should have, alongside quality control department, we should have loss reduction departments paid for to do that. and judged in their performance by how much reduction they do. That way then we'll be able to mainstream reduction of losses and waste.
Commissioner Sacco, please.
Yes, my question was about the commitment of member states and in this thematic of food loss and waste. Indeed, we are making a lot of progress with our member countries in order to really, address this issue. We want them to get committed through our continental post-harvest management strategy and to put it into their national program. We want them also to get, to take their own responsibility of financing this action through the domestic resources mobilization, because we cannot depend all the time on partners. This is our responsibility. And when you are at this high level of responsibility, you need to take action and you need to plan in your own national budget. That is why we have the Maputo Declaration in 2023, who says we should invest at least 10% in agriculture budget. So this is the way forward that we are working with our member state in order for them to address this issue and take their own responsibility to mitigate the effect of mostly post-harvest loss. Since somebody also said about this post-harvest loss, for us, post-harvest loss is more important because we don't waste food because we don't produce enough to waste. But we have a problem when at the gate farm, when we harvest, due to lack of infrastructure, due to lack of wholesale market, roads, electricity, and the storage facility. So we have a problem there, and that's where we need to invest and really address this issue of infrastructure so that we will not lose this 40% of our production on sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. DG2.
Okay. I just touched several issues. First, I think you mentioned that it is traditionally all the agriculture sector pay more attention on the production. But now it's as more and more people live in the city, and we will have 70% of people live in the city. So that means they will consumer driving supply chain will be changed. And then cold chain should be meet the demand. So that is a big movement for next 10 years. And the second, also, I want to mention that lady, Julia, yeah? You said the Julia Selena, stop wasting food. So I do agree we need some social campaign nowadays globally to really marshal all the efforts which from the producer, consumers, and the suppliers working together. And that will be quick and sustainable way to, because have to change the consumption pattern and consumption culture. Because look the case, not only the West developed country waste food, and also some new developed emerging countries are waste also. They also suffering from malnutrition, non-communicable diseases seriously. So that's why we think no matter you are poor or rich, that's a big issues. So we need, that's why I really strongly recommend once we have a World Food System Summit, we will have design some kind of social global campaign to especially start from family, as I said, from kindergarten and primary school, high school, and the university cafeteria. And then come to all the cafeteria for companies. A lot of companies offer the good food, but they waste a lot also. If we invest, even your FAO, now I can, and now I put a slogan on, if you waste food, I will charge you 10% more. That's where perhaps. And you have to appreciate, at another policy level, maybe we can recommend also, should be food is really cheap compared to your salary. It's one hand, it's an indication of development and civilization. On the other hand, it's really young and more younger people, they are not appreciate the food. It's real meaning, real value. They consider just money. No, food is not only money. I said it's a environment, it's a civilization, it's a culture. That's something we have to build up. Yeah. And last, I wanted to mention the one and the friends from Argentina. FAO, we wanted to work together with other excellencies, countries. We can have a capability to develop GIS systems. And with the satellite technology, you can really survey the natural resources for soil, for water, and for others. That's, I think, it's something missing, because during GM meeting, a lot of people talk about the action plan for the climate change. But what is the basic situation, basic data is still missing. So if you figure out the rainfall and the soil, different specific element of agricultural, these issues, and that will be helpful for us how to improve the efficiency of and the productivity, and with limited natural resources. And my friend from Germany, you said that the database, and so far we create the data will be updated. Every once we get more and more country members to contribute to the data. So Maxima, if we want to get some, you just get the online of FAO, and then you can get the regularly updated information if you want. I'm going to build up the digital FAO. And the last time we met in Germany in the Green Week, I was just starting my campaign to be FAO-DG. I said, during past 5 years, I really want to build up a digital farming in the world. So now we started with the digital FAO and the digital farming and digital rural development in the future. And like, I wish you can support me, my friend from Germany. Thank you.
Well, I think it's extremely important that we have continuous updates on progress or lack thereof. So the SOFA report must not be a unique document, I think it's very promising that you have these indicators on the losses and the indicator to come on the waste. I understand that's not yet ready, but we will hear more about that from UNEP in the next session. So that we can pin down who needs to get more pressure from NGO or others. Colleagues, I've seen 2 more hands who would like to say something. Say so, don't expect an answer. Address colleagues then in the coffee break. So Stephen Lapidge from Australia.
Thank you. Marcus, a lot of people have looked to the UK and the great work they've done in terms of reducing food loss and waste. The question really is, we've been given an indicator around the reduction or the impact. What has been the cost and what has been the standout intervention?
Matthias Mogge from Welthungerhilfe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joachim. I mean, we have heard already very exciting examples of how to reduce food loss, food waste. I just wonder whether we would need probably more research in order to formulate probably more regulations and also probably laws. I'm not so sure. We have a lot of voluntary action. We have a lot of reports. We have the Agenda 2030, the SDGs, and so on. But these are all rather on a voluntary basis. And I wonder whether we need some more firm regulations, some more firm laws.
Thank you. Colleagues, let me point out that there are ambassadors in the room who are experts and interested parties to these deliberations. Excellencies, thank you for being here, for conveying messages, for engaging with us during coffee breaks. And there are also some specialized journalists in the room. Communicate what you hear and press us to say more if you want to hear more. I think it's important that this is not just an internal Chamber Academy meeting, but that messages and challenges are well communicated around the world. Without further ado, don't waste food during the coffee break, although it is free. Thank you.
You have to chat. Thank you.